From which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Empty Nest. Victor Harmon stepped into his silent home, the Thanksgiving decorations he'd purchased at the airport still clutched in his hand. 3 months in Dubai, finalizing the security contract that would set his company for life. All he wanted was to surprise Diane and celebrate properly. The house felt wrong. Too still. Too empty. Hello? Diane. His voice echoed through their modernist home. The polished concrete floors that his wife had insisted on during the renovation amplified his footsteps as he moved from room to room. In the living room, a single lamp illuminated an elderly woman in a rocking chair. Diane's stepmother, Rosalind Vega, sat with her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her gnarled hands folded in her lap. "Where's Diane?" Victor asked, setting down his bags. Rosalind merely gestured toward the kitchen island where a folded note sat. Victor's stomach tightened as he picked it up, recognizing Diane's flowing handwriting. "Gone on a cruise with my ex. You'll stay home and take care of stepmom. She needs you. Back in 2 weeks. Don't call." Victor read it twice, then a third time. 15 years of marriage reduced to 2 sentences and an order. No apology, no explanation. "Which ex?" he asked quietly, though he already knew. Boyd Tanner, the photographer who had remained friends with Diane. The one who always had some reason to call or text. The one whose name he'd seen too many times on her phone. "Boyd," Rosalind confirmed, her voice raspy from decades of cigarettes. She opened one eye fully and fixed it on Victor. "Shall we begin?" Victor looked at her, puzzled. "Begin what?" "Your education," she said, rising slowly from the chair. She was friendlier than Victor remembered from their last visit 3 years ago. "Boyd and Diane have been planning this for months. The cruise is just the start." "What are you talking about?" Victor's confusion gave way to anger. Rosalind moved to a weathered leather bag beside her chair and extracted a manila envelope. "I may be old, but I'm not blind or stupid. Diane thinks I've lost my faculties, which is why she felt comfortable discussing everything in front of me. She's planning to take you for everything, Victor." Victor took the envelope and pulled out several photographs. Diane and Boyd embracing on what appeared to be a hotel balcony. Timestamped 2 months ago. Another showed them at a lawyer's office. The last was a document, a draft divorce filing with notes about hiding assets. "Why show me this?" Victor asked, his voice dangerously calm. Rosalind smiled, revealing teeth too perfect to be natural. "Because despite what my stepdaughter thinks, I rather like you. And I've always despised Boyd Tanner. He's the reason my husband, Diane's father, drank himself to death after Boyd seduced Diane the first time around." Victor sat heavily on the couch, the photographs scattered before him. "We have a prenup, which they're planning to invalidate. Boyd has some attorney friend who specializes in breaking ironclad agreements." She sat beside Victor. "You have 4 days before they return. Diane texted me. Cruise was shorter than planned. Boyd got seasick." Victor looked at the woman beside him, seeing her clearly for the first time. Beneath the facade of fragility was something hard and sharp. "What exactly are you proposing, Rosalind?" "I have resources, knowledge, and I've been keeping tabs on both of them for years." She pulled out a small notebook from her pocket. "Boyd has secrets. Diane has weaknesses. And you have something they both want." "What's that?" "The Harmon family legacy. The collection. The real reason she married you in the first place." Rosalind's eyes gleamed. "They think you don't know what you have." Victor thought of his grandfather's art collection, stored in a climate-controlled warehouse. Pieces most museums would kill for, acquired during his grandfather's time as a procurement specialist in post-war Europe. The collection Diane had been cataloging for years. "And what do you get out of this?" Victor asked. Rosalind smiled fully now. "Justice, and the chance to see Boyd Tanner finally pay for what he did to my family." She extended her thin hand. "So, shall we begin?" Victor took her hand, his grip firm, his resolve hardening. "Yes, we shall." Chapter 2, Paper Trails. "Boyd has been in financial trouble for years," Rosalind explained as she spread documents across Victor's home office desk. "His photography business is a front. He sells forgeries through it, good ones." It was day 2 of what Victor had begun thinking of as his education. He'd called his company, arranged for an extended absence, citing a family emergency. Now he sat across from his wife's stepmother, learning about the man who'd stolen his wife. How do you know all this? Victor asked, examining bank statements showing large, irregular deposits to Boyd's business account. Rosalind adjusted her glasses. Before I retired, I worked for an insurance company. Art theft division. Boyd was on our watch list, but we could never prove anything. She tapped a photograph showing Boyd with a known art dealer of questionable reputation. He's talented, but lazy. Uses his legitimate commissions to gain access to private collections. Victor thought back to how eager Boyd had been to photograph their home for an architectural magazine 3 years ago. How Diane had given him access to every room. And Diane? What's her role in this? Rosalind's expression softened slightly. My stepdaughter has always been drawn to dangerous men. Boyd was her first love, back when she was 20. He broke her heart when he left her for a gallery owner who could advance his career. She sighed. When they reconnected at your charity gala last year, he convinced her they were meant to be together. She's been planning to leave me for a year? Victor felt coldness spreading through his chest. No, Rosalind said. That came later. At first, she was just helping him identify valuable pieces from collections she had access to through her work as an art historian, including yours. Victor poured himself another whiskey. So she's been helping him steal? Not exactly. She's been helping him decide what to forge. Boyd creates replicas of pieces that aren't frequently displayed or examined. The owners keep the forgeries, never knowing their originals have been sold on the black market. And my collection? Rosalind slid another folder toward him. Your grandfather's collection is their retirement plan. Diane has been documenting it for years, allegedly for insurance purposes. What she's actually done is create a detailed catalog for Boyd. They plan to swap out the most valuable pieces over time. Victor flipped through the photographs, his grandfather's prized Degas, the small Renoir, and most valuable of all, a Vermeer study that had never been publicly authenticated or displayed. Why tell me this, Rosalind? You could have warned Diane I was coming home early. The older woman's face hardened. Diane hasn't been kind to me since her father died. She blames me for not saving him from his depression. She's dumped me in terrible care facilities twice when I became inconvenient. She leaned forward. And she plans to put me in the worst nursing home she can find once she has your money. I heard her discussing it with Boyd. Victor studied the woman before him. What exactly do you want me to do? Destroy them, Rosalind said simply. Not physically, though I wouldn't object. Destroy their plans, their relationship, their futures. She pulled a small thumb drive from her pocket. This contains evidence of Boyd's forgeries, enough to send him to prison. But using it would be too simple, too quick. Victor took the drive, turning it over in his hand. You want them to suffer. I want justice. And I think you do too. She fixed him with her penetrating gaze. You built your security firm from nothing. You're not a man who lets people take what's yours. Victor thought about the years of building his company, the sacrifices he'd made. The nights Diane had complained about his absences while apparently planning her exit strategy. I need to see for myself, he said finally. Rosalind nodded. Naturally. Trust but verify. It's what makes you good at what you do. She reached for her phone. Diane always gives Boyd her phone password. And Boyd never changes his email password. She showed Victor her phone screen, displaying Boyd's email account. See for yourself. Victor spent the next hour scrolling through messages between his wife and her lover. Their plans laid bare in cold, calculating detail. The cruise was meant to be a test run for their new life. Diane had been methodically cataloging Victor's weaknesses, including what she called his pathetic need for her approval. Tomorrow, Victor said, setting down the phone, we'll begin preparing a proper welcome home for them. Rosalind smiled. I thought you might say that. Chapter 3, Foundations. Victor stood in the climate-controlled warehouse, examining his family's collection. The pieces that had survived war, displacement, and time. The legacy his grandfather had entrusted to him, and that his wife had planned to steal piece by piece. We need to move everything, he told Palmer Wells, his head of security. The tall, impassive man had worked for Victor for a decade, and his loyalty was absolute. All of it, sir. Palmer surveyed the rows of crated artwork and sculptures. Every piece. Use the protocol we developed for the Saudi royal family collection. Victor handed him a tablet with a new inventory. These 5 pieces will go to separate secure locations. The rest to our facility in Geneva. Palmer nodded, already coordinating with his team through his earpiece. What about the replicas? Victor turned to where Rosalind sat watching the activity. Are you sure your contact can deliver on such short notice? Monroe owes me his career, Rosalind said. He'll have the replicas ready by tomorrow evening. Not museum quality, but good enough to fool Diane and Boyd during a cursory inspection. Victor nodded, reviewing the warehouse security footage on his phone. He zoomed in on the last visit Diane had made, noting how she photographed specific pieces while the regular security guard was distracted. Palmer, I want new biometric locks installed at the house. Key access only for me, codes only I know. What about Mrs. Harmon? My wife won't be needing access anymore. Victor's voice was flat. As Palmer moved away to continue the operation, Victor sat beside Rosalind. Tell me about Diane's other weaknesses. Rosalind considered the question. She needs to be seen as the victim, never the villain. She rewrites history to maintain that self-image. The older woman adjusted her sweater. When she left Boyd the first time, she told everyone he cheated on her. The truth was she couldn't handle his frequent travel and broke things off. And her father? She blamed me for his drinking, but she was the one who abandoned him when he needed her most. After his gallery failed, he reached out to her for help. She was too busy with her new academic career to bother. Rosalind's voice held decades of bitterness. Thomas drank himself to death while she was at a conference in Florence. She's never forgiven herself, so she blames me instead. Victor processed this information. And her new plan with Boyd. They've convinced themselves they're star-crossed lovers, finally getting their happy ending. Boyd has promised her a house in Provence, a small gallery of their own. Rosalind laughed dryly. All funded by your money and art collection, of course. Victor's phone buzzed with a message from his attorney. He read it and smiled grimly. It's done. The trust has been modified. If Diane files for divorce, she gets nothing but the prenup minimum. My grandfather's collection now technically belongs to a foundation I control. She'll contest it, Rosalind warned. Let her try. Victor stood, surveying the activity around them. The amendments were made months ago, predating any knowledge of her affair. My attorney backdated the paperwork and has 3 partners willing to testify it was done during my estate planning review last year. Rosalind raised an eyebrow. Your attorney is comfortable with that arrangement? Glenn has been my friend since college. He owes me for keeping his cocaine habit quiet during our law school days. Victor smiled tightly. People underestimate the power of old debts and shared secrets. Palmer approached them. Sir, the first transport is ready. We'll have everything moved within 18 hours. Excellent. Victor turned to Rosalind. Now, tell me about Boyd's vulnerabilities. His ego, she said immediately. He needs constant validation of his genius. And he's paranoid about being exposed as a fraud, both artistically and literally. Victor nodded, ideas forming. What about his relationship with Diane? Does he actually love her? Rosalind considered this. He loves what she can give him. Access, legitimacy in the art world, and now, your collection. But Boyd only truly loves himself. Perfect, Victor said, a plan solidifying in his mind. When they return tomorrow, they'll find exactly what I want them to find. And then the real work begins. He helped Rosalind to her feet. Let's go home and prepare their welcome. As they walked to the car, Victor felt a cold clarity he'd never experienced before. The pain of betrayal was transforming into something harder, more focused. The man who had left for Dubai 3 months ago, trusting, perhaps even naive, was gone. In his place stood someone new. Someone who would not rest until justice was served. Chapter 4, Welcome Home. Victor heard the key in the lock just after 2 p.m. on Sunday. He sat in the living room, seemingly absorbed in financial reports, while Rosalind knitted placidly in her rocking chair. The tableau of domestic normalcy they presented belied the calculated preparations of the previous days. Diane entered first, her face falling when she saw Victor. She quickly recovered, plastering on a bright smile. Victor, you're home early. She set down her designer luggage in the foyer. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? I wanted to surprise you for Thanksgiving. He replied evenly, not rising from his seat. Imagine my surprise instead. Boyd Tanner followed Diane inside, hesitating when he saw Victor. The photographer was tanned from the cruise, his salt and pepper beard neatly trimmed, designer clothes carefully casual. His confidence faltered momentarily before he extended his hand. Victor, good to see you. I, gave Diane a ride from the port. Victor ignored the outstretched hand. With a stop at the Grand Hotel in between, I assume? Room 732? The one you checked into 3 days ago. The color drained from Diane's face. Victor, I can explain. Can you explain the divorce papers too? Or the plans for my collection? Victor's voice remained eerily calm. Don't bother denying it. I know everything. Boyd's expression hardened. If you know everything, then you know your marriage has been over for months. Diane's been miserable. Fascinating perspective from the man who's been helping her catalog my family's art collection for her exit strategy. Victor finally stood, his imposing frame towering over the shorter photographer. Did you really think I wouldn't have my own inventory? That I wouldn't notice the discrepancies in her documentation? Diane stepped between them. It's not what you think. I was being thorough for insurance purposes. 7 pieces were documented with the wrong dimensions, Victor said flatly. Specifically, the dimensions of known forgeries currently circulating in private collections. An interesting coincidence. Boyd's face grew rigid. You should watch what you're implying. Or what? Victor smiled coldly. You'll sleep with my wife? Too late for that threat. Rosalind cleared her throat. Perhaps I should retire to my room while you sort this out. Stay, Rosalind, Victor said. After all, Diane insisted I take care of you. Diane turned to her stepmother. What have you told him? The truth, Rosalind replied simply. Something you seem unfamiliar with. Diane's composure cracked. You vindictive old witch. You've always hated me. Enough, Victor cut in. Boyd, I think you should leave. Diane and I need to discuss divorce terms. Relief flashed across Boyd's face. I'll call you later, he told Diane, already backing toward the door. Actually, Victor said, you'll both want to hear this. The terms are simple. Diane gets exactly what the prenup stipulates. Nothing more. Diane laughed incredulously. That's absurd. I'm entitled to half of everything we built together. You're entitled to what you signed for. And before you challenge the prenup, Victor handed her a folder. My attorneys have prepared a detailed accounting of your affair, including hotel receipts, text messages, and witness statements spanning the last 14 months. You had me followed? Diane's voice rose in outrage. No, Victor said. I trusted you completely. Palmer had security protocols that documented everything automatically. He nodded toward the nearly invisible cameras in the ceiling corners. Including your conversation last month about which pieces of my collection would fetch the highest prices through Boyd's connections. Boyd stepped forward, his face flushed. This is harassment. You can't prove anything about the art. Actually, Victor said, I've had the entire collection authenticated again by 3 independent experts. Everything is properly documented now, with new security protocols. He smiled thinly. Feel free to try accessing the warehouse. The biometric locks have been changed. Diane sank onto the couch. Victor, please. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out. You'll sign the divorce papers my attorney has prepared, accepting the prenup terms, or I'll provide evidence of your conspiracy to defraud me to the police. Victor's voice was devoid of emotion. Your choice. Boyd moved to Diane's side. Don't sign anything. He's bluffing. Victor pulled out his phone, pulled up a video, and pressed play. Diane's voice filled the room. Once we replace the Vermeer study with Boyd's copy, we can sell the original through Philippe. Victor will never know. He hasn't actually looked at the collection in years. Diane's face crumpled. Turn it off. Victor obliged. I'll give you 24 hours to decide. In the meantime, I've taken the liberty of moving your things to the guest room. He turned to Boyd. As for you, I suggest you examine your studio security closely. I'd hate for evidence of your forgery operation to find its way to the Art Crimes Division at the FBI. Boyd paled. You wouldn't. Try me, Victor said, his eyes cold. Now get out of my house. After Boyd left, Diane rounded on Rosalind. You did this. You poisoned him against me. Rosalind remained impassive. You did this to yourself, Diane. I merely opened his eyes. I want both of you out of my house, Diane snarled. Correction, Victor said. My house. Owned by my company before we ever met, as stated in the prenup you signed. He checked his watch. I have calls to make. Dinner is at 7 if you decide to join us. As Victor left the room, he heard Diane beginning to sob. The sound, which once would have broken his heart, now felt like the first notes of justice being served. Chapter 5, Fracture Points. 3 days had passed since the confrontation. Diane had moved into the guest room, but refused to sign the divorce papers. Instead, She'd called her own attorney and was contesting everything. She remained in the house, creating an atmosphere of frigid tension. Boyd called her constantly, though she took the conversations outside where Victor couldn't hear them. Rosalind, meanwhile, had become Victor's unlikely ally and confidant. "She's stalling," Rosalind said over breakfast, while Diane was out for her morning run. "Boyd is convincing her they can still win." Victor sipped his coffee. "I know. My sources say he met with an attorney yesterday who specializes in marital asset disputes." "What's your next move?" Rosalind buttered her toast methodically. "Creating distance between them," Victor replied. "A partnership based on mutual greed is easily fractured when the profits disappear." Victor's phone buzzed with a message from Palmer, "Package delivered." Reaction as expected. He smiled slightly. "It begins." Later that afternoon, Diane burst into Victor's home office, her face flushed with anger. "Did you send investigators to Boyd's studio?" Victor looked up calmly from his laptop. "No. Why would I? Someone claiming to be from the Insurance Authentication Bureau spent 3 hours there today, photographing everything and asking questions about his methods." She brandished her phone. "He's freaking out." "The IAB isn't even a real organization," Victor remarked. "Perhaps one of his clients is getting suspicious about the authenticity of their purchases." Diane faltered. "What are you talking about?" "Come now, Diane. You're an art historian. Surely you've noticed the inconsistencies in Boyd's commission work versus the pieces that appear in certain private collections afterward." Victor returned to his laptop. "Maybe ask him about the Matisse study he sold to Gerald Hoffman last year." "That was a legitimate sale of his own work," Diane protested, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "Was it? Interesting that it closely resembles a piece that disappeared from the Brownstein collection during a home renovation. A piece Boyd photographed for Architectural Digest 3 months earlier." Victor didn't look up. "Just a coincidence, I'm sure." Diane stood silently for a moment. "You're trying to turn me against him." "I'm simply stating facts." Victor finally met her gaze. "Did you know Boyd has been selling forged provenance documents along with his original works? The FBI typically adds 5 years per count for that." Before Diane could respond, her phone rang. "Boyd again." She stepped out to take the call, but not before Victor saw the first flicker of doubt in her eyes. That evening, Victor hosted a small dinner party. He'd invited the Whitfields, prominent art collectors and major donors, to the museum where Diane worked as a consultant. Diane had been forced to attend to maintain appearances. "We were devastated to hear about your separation," Miranda Whitfield said to Diane over dessert, "especially after what Victor has done for the new wing of the museum." Diane nearly choked on her wine. "What new wing?" Victor smiled pleasantly. "I was waiting for the official announcement. The Victor Harmon collection will have its own permanent installation. I've donated the entire collection to the museum, with a substantial endowment for maintenance and security." The blood drained from Diane's face. "You donated everything?" "Without discussing it with me. I signed the papers yesterday," Victor confirmed. "The foundation will oversee the collection's management." "I thought you'd be pleased. You've always said the pieces should be publicly accessible." Robert Whitfield raised his glass. "It's an extraordinary gift to the city. The most significant donation in the museum's history." Under the table, Diane's hand gripped Victor's wrist, her nails digging into his skin. "We need to discuss this privately," she hissed. "Of course," Victor said smoothly. "After our guests leave." When the Whitfields had gone, Diane exploded. "You had no right. Those pieces are part of our marital assets." "The collection was never marital property," Victor corrected her. "It was held in trust, as clearly stated in our prenup. I simply redirected the trust's purpose." "Boyd will be furious." "Why would Boyd care about my family's art collection unless he had plans for it?" Victor asked innocently. "Unless, of course, your love story includes a side hustle in art theft." Diane's phone buzzed again. "Boyd calling." She glanced at it, then silenced it. "Problems in paradise?" Victor inquired. Diane's composure cracked. "You've ruined everything." "No, Diane. I've simply changed the game." Victor poured himself a scotch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Rosalind and I have tickets to the symphony." As he left the room, he heard Diane's phone ring again. This time, she answered, her voice low and tense. "We need to talk." "It's all gone." Phase 1 was complete. The wedge had been driven. Chapter 6. Calculated Risks. "She's meeting Boyd at the Silver Oak in an hour," Rosalind reported, setting down her phone. My contact at the restaurant confirmed the reservation. Victor nodded, adjusting his tie in the mirror. 5 days had passed since the dinner party revelation. Diane had been increasingly agitated, spending hours on hushed phone calls with Boyd and her attorney. "What's your plan?" Rosalind asked. "Diane needs to see Boyd's true colors," Victor replied. When threatened, people reveal their priorities. Victor had arranged for Claudia Reeves, a senior investigator from the Art Authentication Board, a very real organization, to be dining at the Silver Oak. An anonymous tip had suggested she might find interest in meeting the couple at Table 9. "Are you joining them?" Rosalind looked skeptical. "No need," Victor said. "Palmer has the restaurant covered, and I've arranged a special delivery for their table." Victor's phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. "Documents delivered to B's studio. Police response estimated 30 minutes. "Right on schedule," he murmured. When Diane returned home 3 hours later, she looked shell-shocked. She found Victor in his study, reviewing documents. "You set us up," she accused, her voice hoarse. "That woman from the authentication board. She knew everything about Boyd's business." Victor set aside his papers. "Did she? How unfortunate." She started asking questions about specific pieces. Private collections. Dates that matched exactly when Diane caught herself. When Boyd was working on commissions. "Fascinating coincidence," Victor remarked. "Almost as fascinating as Boyd leaving you alone to deal with her while he suddenly remembered an urgent appointment." Diane paled. "How did you know that?" "Because Boyd Tanner is a coward who saves himself first," Victor said flatly. "Always has been, according to his history." "He got a call about a break-in at his studio," Diane defended weakly. "Did he? Strange timing." Victor leaned forward. "What did Ms. Reeves want with you, specifically?" Diane sank into a chair. "She asked about my documentation work on your family's collection. Whether I had noticed any irregularities in Boyd's authentication methods." "And what did you tell her?" "That I had no knowledge of anything improper." Diane's hands trembled slightly. "Victor, they're building a case against him." The investigator mentioned the FBI Art Crimes Division. Victor's expression remained impassive. "That sounds serious." Diane's phone rang. Boyd again. She glanced at it, then declined the call. "Trouble in paradise?" Victor asked mildly. "He wants me to provide an alibi for certain dates," Diane admitted. "Says it's just a misunderstanding that will blow over." "And will you?" Diane looked torn. "I don't know what to believe anymore. He says you're framing him out of jealousy." "An interesting theory," Victor said, "though it doesn't explain the photographs I found in your stepmother's possession. Photographs of Boyd selling what appears to be a Degas to a private collector in Monaco last year." He slid a folder across the desk. "A Degas remarkably similar to one your father once owned. One that mysteriously disappeared after Boyd photographed it for an insurance appraisal." Diane's hands shook as she opened the folder. "This can't be real. Your stepmother worked in art theft insurance for 30 years, Diane. She's kept tabs on Boyd since your father died. Ask yourself why." A text message appeared on Diane's phone. She read it, and the color drained from her face. "Boyd's been arrested," she whispered. "His studio was raided. They found evidence." "How unfortunate," Victor said, rising from his desk. "I suggest you contact your attorney immediately. Distance yourself while you can." Diane looked up at him, tears forming. "Victor, I swear I didn't know about any forgeries. You have to believe me." "I don't have to believe anything from you anymore, Diane." Victor's voice was cold. "You made your choice when you plotted to steal my family's legacy while sleeping with another man in our bed. Please," she begged, "help me. If Boyd implicated me, my career is over." Victor studied her for a long moment. "Sign the divorce papers tonight. Accept the prenup terms without contest. Move out by tomorrow evening. And then you'll help me? I'll make a statement to investigators that I believe you were manipulated by Boyd. Nothing more." Victor's expression was granite. "Your reputation in the art world is your problem." Diane wiped her tears, calculation replacing desperation in her eyes. "If I sign, what do I actually get?" "Exactly what the prenup stipulates. The condo in Seattle, your personal accounts, and a settlement of $2 million. Victor's tone was businesslike. "Considering your plans to defraud me of art worth 50 times that amount, I'd call it generous." Another text came through on Diane's phone. She read it and let out a small gasp. "Boyd's attorney is suggesting I could be charged as an accomplice." Her voice shook. He says Boyd has evidence I knew about the forgeries. How unfortunate that your lover would throw you under the bus to save himself, Victor remarked, almost as if he never truly cared about you at all. Diane stood suddenly. I need to make some calls. The divorce papers are on the dining room table, Victor reminded her. Signed and notarized by tomorrow morning, or my statement to investigators will be quite different. After Diane left, Rosalind entered the study. That was brutal, she commented, but there was approval in her voice. It was necessary, Victor replied. Boyd will attempt to implicate her to reduce his own charges. The evidence Palmer planted in his studio is quite compelling. And if she signs? Then phase 2 is complete. Victor checked his watch. The museum curator should be calling her any minute to discuss her consulting position in light of the current situation. Rosalind smiled thinly. You've thought of everything. Not everything, Victor admitted, but enough to ensure they both understand the cost of betrayal. Chapter 7, Collateral Damage. 1 month after Diane signed the divorce papers and moved out, Victor received an unexpected visitor. Natalie Tanner, Boyd's 23-year-old daughter from his first marriage, stood on his doorstep, her expression a mixture of defiance and desperation. Mr. Harmon? I'm Natalie. I need to talk to you about my father. Victor studied the young woman, dark hair like her father's, but her features softer, vulnerable. He stepped aside to let her in. I wasn't aware Boyd kept in contact with you, he remarked, leading her to the living room. He didn't, Natalie said bitterly. Not until he needed bail money. She declined Victor's offer of a drink. I know what he did to you. To my mother before that. To everyone who trusts him. Yet you paid his bail, Victor noted. He's still my father. She twisted the strap of her handbag. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because he's dragging Diane down with him, and she's dragging my mother into it. Victor's interest sharpened. Explain. My mother owns a small gallery in Portland. Nothing fancy, but she built it herself after the divorce. Natalie's voice hardened. Dad convinced Diane to tell investigators that some of the forgeries passed through Mom's gallery. That Mom knowingly sold them. And did she? Of course not. Natalie's eyes flashed. Mom wouldn't know a forgery if it came with a label. She trusted Dad to occasionally consign pieces through her gallery. Now the FBI is investigating her business, her finances. She might lose everything. Victor considered this collateral damage he hadn't anticipated. Why come to me? Because you're the only one who seems capable of outmaneuvering them, Natalie said simply. And because I found these in Dad's storage unit when I was getting some of his things. She pulled out her phone, showing Victor photographs of documents, authentication papers for several pieces from his family's collection, documents he'd never seen before. He was planning to use these somehow, Natalie explained, creating some kind of paper trail that the pieces had been sold legitimately years ago. Victor examined the forgeries, expertly done, with his grandfather's signature convincingly replicated. Did you bring the originals? Natalie nodded. In my car. I'll give them to you on one condition. Help my mother. She's innocent in all this. Victor made a decision. I'll have my attorney contact the investigators today. We'll provide evidence that clears your mother. He studied the young woman. Why betray your father this way? Because he deserves it, Natalie said simply. He abandoned us, cheated my mother out of her divorce settlement, and only contacts me when he needs something. Now he's willing to destroy her to save himself. Her eyes glistened. Family should mean something. After Natalie left, Victor called Palmer. I need everything on Julia Tanner's gallery in Portland. And contact Glenn. We're modifying our strategy. 2 days later, Victor sat across from Special Agent Caroline Delaney of the FBI Art Crimes Division in his attorney's office. Ms. Tanner's gallery was unwittingly used by Boyd, Victor explained, providing documentation Palmer had assembled. These sales records show he maintained complete control of the transactions. Julia Tanner was merely the venue. Agent Delaney reviewed the evidence. This is helpful, but doesn't completely clear her. Perhaps this will, Victor's attorney interjected, sliding forward a USB drive. Security footage from 3 specific sales, showing Boyd handling everything while keeping Ms. Tanner distracted with other clients. We've highlighted the timestamps that correspond with the transactions in question. The agent looked surprised. How did you obtain this? Ms. Tanner's security system automatically backs up to cloud storage, Victor said smoothly. She provided access when we explained the situation. In reality, Palmer's team had reconstructed the footage using partial existing security videos and some creative digital manipulation. The evidence was fabricated but would withstand scrutiny. "And what do you want in exchange for this cooperation, Mr. Harmon?" Agent Delaney asked directly. "Nothing regarding Boyd's case," Victor replied. "He should face the full consequences of his actions. However, I believe Diane Harmon's involvement was more complex." The agent raised an eyebrow. "Are you defending your ex-wife?" "I'm clarifying her role," Victor corrected. "Diane has already provided a full statement admitting she suspected Boyd's activities but was coerced into silence through psychological manipulation and threats." He slid forward another folder. "These are records of transferred funds from Boyd to Diane, labeled as consulting fees, which began shortly after she expressed concerns about his authentication methods." In truth, Victor had created these transfers himself through a complex series of offshore accounts. The payments made it appear that Boyd had been paying Diane for her silence, not her complicity. "Why would you help her after what she did?" the agent asked skeptically. "I'm not helping her," Victor said coldly. "I'm ensuring the right people face the right consequences. Diane will still be censured by the museum board. Her professional reputation is destroyed. But she wasn't the architect of this fraud, Boyd was." After the meeting, Victor's attorney gave him a questioning look. "That was unexpected. Why protect Diane to any degree?" "I'm not protecting Diane," Victor said. "I'm ensuring Boyd can't use her as a scapegoat. This way, he bears the full weight of the prosecution's attention." The attorney nodded slowly. "And the innocent gallery owner being protected helps your image as well." "Justice should be precise," Victor replied. "And seen to be precise." When Victor returned home, Rosalind was waiting with news. Diane called. "Apparently, the museum board has offered her a choice: resignation or termination." "As expected," Victor said, pouring himself a drink. "Did she mention Boyd?" "Only that his attorney dropped her as a client when the evidence of the payments emerged." Rosalind smiled thinly. She sounded desperate. Victor nodded. Phase 3 is proceeding exactly as planned. Chapter 8. House of Cards. 6 weeks later, Boyd Tanner's trial began. Victor attended the opening day, sitting silently at the back of the courtroom as the prosecutor outlined the case against the photographer. 17 counts of art fraud, forgery of documentation, interstate transportation of fraudulent goods, and money laundering. Diane was scheduled to testify as a witness for the prosecution, having accepted a plea deal that granted her immunity in exchange for her testimony. Her career was in ruins, her reputation destroyed, but she would avoid prison. As Victor left the courthouse, he found Diane waiting by his car. "You orchestrated all of this," she said, her voice hollow. "Every detail." Victor regarded her coldly. "You give me too much credit. Boyd's crimes were his own. But the timing? The evidence appearing exactly when it did? The way everything collapsed around us." Diane shook her head. "That was you. Perhaps you're seeing patterns that don't exist," Victor suggested. "A common tendency when one's life is falling apart." Diane stepped closer. "I've lost everything, Victor. My career, my reputation, my future in the art world. Even the money from the settlement is gone to legal fees." Her voice cracked. "What more do you want from me?" "Nothing," Victor replied simply. "I want nothing from you, Diane. Not anymore. Please," she whispered, reaching for his arm. "Help me restart somewhere. I can't even get a teaching position with this scandal attached to my name." Victor removed her hand from his sleeve. "You made your choices. Live with the consequences." "I made a mistake," Diane pleaded, tears forming. "I got caught up in Boyd's schemes, his charm. I was wrong, and I'm paying for it. But this level of destruction, it's cruel. Victor." "Cruel?" Victor's voice hardened. "Was it not cruel to plan the theft of my family's legacy while sharing my bed? To discuss which care facility would be most unpleasant for your stepmother once you had my money? To mock what you called my pathetic need for your approval and messages to your lover?" Diane paled. "How did you?" "I know everything, Diane. Every detail. Every plan. Every contemptuous remark." Victor checked his watch. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting." "Victor, please." Diane was openly crying now. 4 days after Thanksgiving, I was begging you to talk to me, to work things out. I've been trying to reach you for months. Don't you remember any of the good years? 15 years of marriage has to count for something. "It counted for nothing to you when you were planning your exit strategy," Victor replied. "Why should it count for anything to me now?" As he got into his car, Diane called after him. Is your revenge worth it? Does it make you happy? Victor paused, then answered honestly. It's not about happiness, Diane. It's about justice. That evening, Victor hosted a small gathering of business associates, including several new clients for his security firm. His handling of the art fraud case had earned him a reputation for discretion and thoroughness that was attracting high-profile collectors seeking security consultations. As the evening wound down, Victor found himself speaking with Philippe Durand, a French gallery owner who had once done business with Boyd. You know, I never trusted Tanner, Philippe remarked, swirling his cognac. Something about him was always too convenient, too eager to please certain clients. Yet you showcased his work, Victor noted. Philippe shrugged elegantly. In my business, sometimes one showcases what sells, not necessarily what is authentic. He gave Victor a measuring look. Your ex-wife testified today, I hear. So I'm told. She did not fare well under cross-examination, Philippe continued. Boyd's attorney was relentless in highlighting her expertise as an art historian. How she could not have been unaware. Victor said nothing, but satisfaction settled in his chest. Boyd had indeed thrown Diane under the bus, just as predicted. You have handled this scandal with remarkable grace, Philippe observed. Others would have sued everyone involved, created more spectacle. Some battles are better won quietly, Victor replied. Later, after all guests had departed, Rosalind joined Victor on the terrace, wrapped in a shawl against the evening chill. Boyd's daughter contacted me, she said. Julia's gallery has been formally cleared by the FBI. She wanted to thank you. Victor nodded. An innocent bystander protected, as it should be. And Diane? Rosalind asked. She looked terrible on the news footage. Diane made her choices, Victor said simply. Now she faces the consequences. Rosalind studied him. You know, when I first showed you those photographs of Diane and Boyd, I wasn't certain you had this in you. The calculated patience. The strategic dismantling of their lives. Neither was I, Victor admitted. But I discovered something about myself through this process. And what's that? Victor gazed out at the city lights below. That justice requires more than emotion. It requires precision, planning, and the willingness to see it through to the end, no matter how painful. Rosalind nodded slowly. Thomas, Diane's father, would have appreciated your thoroughness. He was a kind man, but he understood consequences. She rose from her chair. Tomorrow is Boyd's star witness. Should be interesting to see who he throws under the bus next. As Rosalind left, Victor remained on the terrace, contemplating the ruins of the life he had once shared with Diane. The pain had dulled to a distant ache, replaced by the cold satisfaction of a plan perfectly executed. Phase 3 was nearly complete. Only one final piece remained. Chapter 9, Terminal Velocity. 1 year to the day after that fateful Thanksgiving, Victor sat in his new office overlooking Central Park. He'd relocated to New York, expanding his security firm to focus on high-end art collections and museum installations. The scandal surrounding Boyd Tanner's art fraud had made Victor's company the go-to consultancy for collectors concerned about authenticity and security. Boyd had been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His attempts to implicate others, including Diane, had backfired when evidence emerged suggesting he had been manipulating and threatening multiple people in the art world for years. Victor had carefully arranged for past victims to come forward at strategic moments during the trial. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant entered with a manila envelope. This was hand-delivered, sir. The courier insisted it was urgent. Victor opened it to find divorce papers, not his own, but Boyd and Diane's. They had apparently married in a small ceremony 3 months earlier, while Boyd was awaiting sentencing. Now Diane was filing for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Included was a handwritten note. Victor, you won. Completely. I married Boyd thinking we could somehow rebuild once this nightmare ended. I was wrong. He blames me for everything. Says I betrayed him by accepting the plea deal. I'm moving to my cousin's place in Arizona. Changing my name. Starting over as a bookstore clerk, the only job I could find. I hope your revenge has brought you peace. Some strange part of me even hopes you find happiness again someday. Diane. Victor placed the note on his desk, feeling nothing but a detached sense of completion. The final piece had fallen into place. His phone rang, Rosalind calling from her new apartment in the building Victor had purchased for her. Have you seen the news? she asked without preamble. Julia Tanner's gallery has been acquired by the Portland Museum of Modern Art. They're establishing it as a permanent exhibition space with her as director. Natalie sent me a message thanking you again. Good, Victor said. A proper resolution for the innocent parties. And have you decided about the foundation offer? Rosalind inquired. Victor glanced at the proposal on his desk. An invitation to chair the newly established Authentication and Security Council for the National Association of Art Museums. It would cement his company's position at the forefront of the industry. I'll accept, he decided. It seems fitting. Indeed. Rosalind paused. I received a call from Diane yesterday. Victor stiffened slightly. What did she want? To apologize, surprisingly. And to ask if I knew whether you might ever forgive her. Rosalind's tone was neutral. I told her that wasn't how you operated. That once someone betrayed your trust, that door closed permanently. You know me well, Victor remarked. Better than most, Rosalind agreed. She also mentioned Boyd has been attempting to sell his story to publishers from prison. A tell-all about the art fraud world. Victor smiled coldly. Let him try. My attorneys have already secured injunctions against any publication that would violate the confidentiality agreements he signed during the plea negotiations. After ending the call, Victor walked to the window overlooking the park. The autumn leaves were turning, reminding him of that Thanksgiving day when everything changed. His phone buzzed with a text from Palmer. Final transfers complete. All accounts untraceable. The last threads of his revenge had been tied off. The secret offshore accounts Victor had established in Boyd's name, containing funds that would eventually be discovered by prison investigators, ensuring Boyd would never see parole. The anonymous tips that would continue to reach the FBI about additional forgeries, extending Boyd's sentence with each new discovery. And finally, the trust fund Victor had secretly established for Natalie Tanner and her mother Julia, managed through layers of corporate entities that could never be traced back to him. A reward for their unwitting role in his carefully orchestrated justice. Victor's intercom buzzed. Sir, your 2:00 appointment is here. The Guggenheim security director. Send him in, Victor replied, turning from the window. As he prepared to greet his visitor, Victor reflected on the path that had brought him here. The betrayal had transformed him, burned away any weakness or hesitation. He had discovered a talent for strategic thinking, for anticipating human behavior, for crafting consequences that precisely matched the crime. Some might call it cruelty. Victor called it justice. And in this new life he had built from the ashes of betrayal, justice was his business. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.